The purpose of armor is simple: to protect, to turn a man of flesh and bone into a fortress of steel. For a time, it worked beautifully. The full suit of plate armor was a masterpiece of medieval engineering, an icon of invincibility. But what happens when protection becomes an obsession? What happens when the fortress becomes a prison? This is the story of the great armor arms race, a desperate century-long struggle that saw knights encase themselves in ever thicker, ever heavier layers of steel, only to discover they had built their own cage. Part 1. The Apex Predator, the Golden Age of Plate Armor. In the early 15th century, the knight in full plate armor was the apex predator of the European battlefield. A suit of Gothic or Milanese plate was a work of art. It was a complex system of interlocking steel plates, ingeniously articulated to allow for a surprising range of motion. It was designed not just to block, but to deflect. The smooth, curved surfaces of the breastplate, the helmet, and the shoulder pieces were engineered to make a sword blade or an arrow glance off harmlessly. The entire weight of the armor, around 25 kilograms, was distributed so evenly across the body that a fit man could still mount a horse and even do a somersault. Against traditional medieval weapons, it was nearly perfect. A common soldier with a spear or an axe had little hope of harming a fully armored knight. For a brief, glorious moment, the knight was a walking testament to the triumph of defensive technology. But the enemies of the knight were also evolving, and they were developing new keys to unlock this steel shell. Part 2, the new threats emerge. As we've seen in this series, the 14th and 15th centuries brought new terrifying threats to the knight's dominance. First came the English longbow. Its arrows, tipped with narrow, armor-piercing bodkin points, could with enough force and luck find and penetrate the thinner plates or chainmail weak points of a knight's armor. Then came the Swiss pikemen and their halberds. The pike kept the knight at a distance, while the halberd, a brutal combination of an axe and a spear, was designed not to cut, but to crush. It could batter a helmet, dent a breastplate, and break the bones underneath. But the true game changer was gunpowder. The early arquebus fired a heavy lead ball that at close range could punch a hole straight through even the finest steel breastplate. The knight was no longer invincible. He was vulnerable, and his reaction to this vulnerability was not to become faster or more agile. It was to become thicker. Part 3, the vicious cycle. Heavier, slower, poorer. This began the great arms race. As the weapons designed to kill them became more powerful, the knights and their armorers responded with the only solution they could conceive of: more steel. Armorers began proofing their breastplates, testing them by shooting them with a pistol at point-blank range. If the armor resisted the shot without being penetrated, it was deemed worthy. This process naturally led to breastplates becoming significantly thicker and heavier, especially over the vital areas of the chest. This had devastating consequences. First, the loss of mobility. The graceful, articulated suits of the Golden Age were replaced by heavier, more cumbersome armor. A knight might now be carrying 30, even 35 kilograms of weight. This made him slower on his feet and exhausted him far more quickly, a fatal flaw on a chaotic battlefield. Second, the cost became astronomical. More steel and more complex forging techniques meant the price of a full suit of armor skyrocketed, putting it even further out of reach for all but the wealthiest magnates. This arms race wasn't just about protection. It was about economics, and only the super rich could continue to compete. The very thing they needed to survive was bankrupting them. This obsession with pure defense led armor down a strange path. The finest, most expensive armor was no longer being made for the battlefield at all, but for a completely different kind of arena. Part 4, the Gilded Cage, the absurdity of tournament armor. The absolute peak of this arms race was not found in war, but in the spectacle of the late medieval tournament. Here, armor evolved into its most beautiful, most protective, and most utterly useless form. Tournament armor, especially that designed for jousting, was a different beast entirely. It could weigh over 45 kilograms, or 100 pounds. It was massively reinforced on the left side, the side that would take the impact of an opponent's lance. Some jousting helmets were bolted directly to the breastplate, meaning the wearer couldn't even turn his head. This was not armor for a soldier, it was equipment for a specialized sporting event. And it was fantastically ornate, covered in gold leaf fluting and elaborate acid-etched designs. It was a rolling status symbol, a declaration of wealth so immense that it bordered on the absurd. And here lies the ultimate irony. This armor designed for maximum protection became a trap. A knight who was unhorsed in a joust was completely helpless. He was often too heavy to get up on his own, requiring a team of squires or even a small crane to be lifted to his feet. The tragic death of King Henry II of France in 1559 was the final bloody punctuation mark on this era of absurdity. During a joust, a splinter from his opponent's lance flew through the eye slit of his helmet, embedding itself in his brain. Even the most advanced, most expensive, most protective armor in the world could not save him. It had become a gilded cage offering only the illusion of safety. The story of the armor arms race is the story of a warrior class desperately trying to cling to relevance in a world that was leaving them behind. Faced with new threats, their solution was always more steel, more weight, more expense. But in their obsessive quest for personal physical protection, they sacrificed the very things that had once made them effective mobility, agility, and endurance. They built their own prison of steel, becoming too slow for the battlefield, too heavy for their horses, and too expensive for their kings. The knight became an icon trapped in amber, a beautiful ornate fossil from a bygone age. He had armored his body so completely that he could no longer function in the new world of war. This story of how a strength, when taken to its extreme, becomes a fatal weakness is a critical chapter in our series. If you appreciate this deep dive into the technology and tactics of the past, show your support by hitting the like button. And to continue our journey to the very end of this era, subscribe to The Knight's Journey and ring the notification bell. Because history teaches us a hard lesson. Those who cannot adapt are doomed to become relics, no matter how strong their armor may be.